held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
In Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the status UN summit. A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Early voting for Korea's local elections began this morning. Polling stations will remain open until 6 p.m. tomorrow, and eligible voters can cast their ballots at any of the early voting locations nationwide, regardless of their registered address. Korea and the United States plan to hold a two-day security meeting in Seoul starting next Tuesday for follow-up consultations on commitments outlined in the recent joint fact sheet signed in November following the summit between Presidents Yi and Trump. U.S. and Iranian negotiators have reportedly reached a tentative deal to extend their ceasefire and begin nuclear talks. Still, U.S. President Donald Trump has yet to sign off on the agreement, and Iran has not officially confirmed it has accepted the deal. Korea's first local elections of the Lee administration are now underway as early voting began today at 6 a.m. For more on this, we have our political correspondent An Sung-jin at one of the locations. So Sung-jin, tell us where you are.
Good morning, Eunji. I'm at a community center in Yongsan-gu District, Seoul, where early voting is taking place. I've been out here since 7 a.m., a little past an hour since the opening at 6 a.m. We've seen a steady amount of people come in even during the early hours, either before work or on their way from a morning routine. There are around 3,570 early voting locations nationwide, and many have come with their hope that the ballot will decide the future of their local area. Have a listen to some of what the voters have to say during the early hours.
I always try to vote early on the first day before heading to work. There's a candidate that I believe will work for our community, so I came out to cast my vote.
Coming to the first day of early voting with my mom has kind of become a routine every election, so we came out again this morning to vote. I voted for someone I hope will do good work for this district.
Right, then Sung-jin, for those who would like to participate in today's early voting, what should they keep in mind?
Right, polling stations opened at 6 a.m. and will remain open until 6 p.m. both today and tomorrow. For early voting, eligible voters can vote nationwide regardless of their registered address, but they must bring a government-issued ID. Now, most voters around the nationwide will receive 7 ballots, but those holding a parliamentary by-election will receive an additional ballot. The National Election Commission says live video footage of ballot storage facilities will be made available to the public around the clock. Monitoring ballot storage conditions through live screens from regional election commission offices will also be available. While local elections determine regional leadership, they're also widely seen as something of a midterm test for the central government. As recent polls show narrowing gaps between ruling and opposition party candidates will continue their campaigning till voting day next week, Wednesday. That's all I have for now, but I will be back with more updates for our later newscast.
All right, that was our An Sung-jin standing by live at an early voting location. Meanwhile, Korea and the United States will hold a two-day inaugural meeting in Seoul next week to launch follow-up consultations on security commitments outlined in the allies' recent joint fact sheet. The talks will take place on June 2nd and 3rd and bring together senior officials from diplomacy, defense, energy, nuclear safety, and technology agencies from both countries. Seoul's delegation will be led by First Vice Foreign Minister Park Yun-ju, while the U.S. side will be headed by Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Allison Hooker. The consultations are expected to focus on implementing bilateral security and strategic cooperation measures discussed during the Korea-U.S. summit, amid efforts to modernize the alliance in areas including advanced technology, energy security, and extended deterrence. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to visit North Korea soon, possibly as early as next week. This will be his first trip to Pyongyang in around 7 years. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Andrew Millard, head of the Department of International Relations at Changwon National University. Professor Millard, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again.
So, what could Xi's visit mean for security on the Korean Peninsula?
So, as you just said, firstly, this has not been 100% confirmed that Xi is actually going to visit Pyongyang. However, all of the signs are very strong that he will be visiting, and probably very soon, within the next couple of weeks. Now, this is very important because over the past few weeks especially, Xi Jinping has been very busy in China. He's had delegations coming in from the US, from Russia, from Pakistan, from Serbia. So far in 2026, Xi Jinping has not been outside of China. So this is quite significant that he's choosing North Korea, that he's choosing Pyongyang for his first overseas summit of the year. Now, why is he doing this? Arguably, it's because even though we have the China, Russia, North Korea sort of partnership that is growing, over the past couple of years, within that, really, North Korea and Russia have been deepening their ties, especially in security and sort of security partnerships and so on. And so really, this is an opportunity for Xi Jinping to go to Pyongyang and say, look, China is still a key strategic partner in Northeast Asia when it comes to security issues. Of course, he's likely to discuss other trade issues and things like that, but really I think security is going to be the key one. And basically at the moment we see North Korea and Russia developing those ties. China has been pushed a little bit to the side, so he'll want to make sure that China is at the forefront of all security issues in North Korea, in the region.
Right, and this week Singapore's foreign minister was on a rare trip to both South and North Korea, and he was a member of the cabinet in Singapore when the country hosted the first summit meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the United States in 2018, right? So some analysts see this as North Korea's way of indirectly sort of signaling to Washington that it's open to dialogue again. What's your take on this?
So again, they're very sort of secretive. Nothing has been made clear. Nothing has been sort of made official. So when we have these Singaporean summits going to, and it's been China, North Korea, South Korea, so it's not specifically to North Korea, we can't really read too much into it until after it's happened and they make some official statements about what has been discussed. Now, on the other hand, generally, North Korea has been quite indirect in sort of announcing its sort of changes in policies, whether it wants to participate in dialogue or not. So that's another signal that maybe there is some change happening. But again, we shouldn't really read too much into it as of yet. So far, there's been no major indication from North Korea that it's ready to restart dialogue, and especially to restart negotiations, even if it does start dialogue. Now, on the other hand, we could also say that for North Korea, this is a perfect opportunity to start dialogue because we have the US just been to China, and Donald Trump has quite a good relationship with Xi Jinping. Generally, Donald Trump has had a pretty good relationship with Vladimir Putin in Russia as well. And so we could say that actually for North Korea, maybe now is a good time to restart the dialogue, and they can do it through Singapore.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes then. North Korea this week said it tested AI-guided missiles and artillery rockets designed for modern warfare. So how exactly are how advanced are North Korea's weapons capabilities at this point?
In terms of how advanced their capabilities are, it's really hard for anyone to say unless they're in North Korea. We should be quite careful. A lot of countries, but especially North Korea, will say things that maybe are not entirely true. However, it was quite significant, and there's a couple of things we should look at. Firstly, these tests were with short-range missiles, so really they're only sort of focusing on really South Korea. These short-range missiles, they're not going to go to China, obviously, or Russia. They're not really going to go to Japan. So this was a little bit of a warning to South Korea. Maybe the North saying, look, we know in South Korea, semiconductor AI is booming. We are not far behind. So don't make that mistake that North Korea is not advancing either. But we also need to ask this question, where is this technology coming from? Is this being developed inside North Korea based on their own technologies? Or, and I think more likely, is this showing the further deepening security ties, alliance between North Korea and Russia, who may be supplying the North with this AI capabilities? But altogether, on the whole, I don't think we should be surprised that North Korea is using AI. Any country that is not looking towards that is going to be behind. So I think it's not that unexpected.
I see. And as for South Korea, the country is seeking to launch its first nuclear-powered submarine by the mid-2030s, and that's aimed at countering the North submarine-launched nuclear missile threats. So could you just briefly tell us how realistic this goal is?
On the whole, it's relatively realistic. It's maybe a little bit aggressive. So if we compare, for example, with the AUKUS deal, so the Australia, UK, US deal from a couple of years ago, they are looking to, again, take delivery of the first submarines in the early 2030s. So similar sort of timeline, around 10 years. However, in South Korea, there may be a few more obstacles. So again, next week, they're going to have these security talks. Really, the issue of nuclear fuel in South Korea, it's a little bit more sensitive than it was in Australia for various reasons. So that may be an issue that slightly delays the production. But also, if we have production of 10 years, we also need to consider that the operations of these submarines are going to be very different. The training of the sailors, the maintenance, all of these issues come into effect. So I think if they're quite aggressive, it's relatively realistic, but we should be looking mid-30s to late 30s, in all honesty.
I see. All right, Professor Miller, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The United States and Iran appear closer to a tentative deal aimed at ending the war, with signs of a possible shift in Tehran's stance on nuclear talks. But final approval is still needed, with U.S. President Donald Trump yet to give the green light. Our Kim Jun-ho reports.
The United States and Iran have tentatively agreed to a 60-day memorandum of understanding to extend their ceasefire and launch talks on Iran's nuclear program. Citing U.S. and regional sources involved in the mediation, Axios reported Thursday local time that most terms had been settled on as of Tuesday. Still, U.S. President Donald Trump has yet to sign off on the deal, and Iran has not officially confirmed its acceptance. The proposed MOU would ensure free passage through the Strait of Hormuz with no shipping tolls, and Iran required to clear all mines within 30 days. U.S. naval blockade would also be eased gradually, in line with the recovery of commercial shipping traffic. On the nuclear front, Iran would pledge not to pursue nuclear weapons, while initial talks during the 60-day period would focus on Tehran's highly enriched uranium and enrichment activities. If nuclear issues move forward, Washington in return would discuss sanctions relief, frozen asset releases, and humanitarian support for Iran. But if Iran fails to deliver on nuclear commitments, Trump warned that both economic and military options remain in play. Key sticking points still need to be resolved, with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance saying Thursday that talks with Iran were close but not there yet.
And we're in a position where we could substantially set back their nuclear program, not just during the term of this president, but over the long term. That's a very, very good thing for the American people. So we're not there yet, but we're very close. We're going to keep on working at it.
Yet tensions remain high as sporadic clashes continue. Iranian media reported Thursday local time that the military launched a missile from southern Iran toward an unidentified target, while an explosion was reported near the Strait of Hormuz. Some sources also raised the possibility of a maritime clash in the Persian Gulf. Amid the tensions, Pakistan's foreign minister will visit Washington Friday local time for talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, with regional security expected to be on the agenda. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
Israel has carried out its first airstrike on the Beirut area in nearly 3 weeks, targeting a commander linked to an Iranian militia operating alongside Hezbollah. The strike comes despite weeks of reported pressure from the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump to avoid attacks on the Lebanese capital during a fragile ceasefire. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Israeli military says it carried out an airstrike Thursday local time in the southern suburbs of Beirut, marking the first Israeli strike on the Lebanese capital area in nearly 3 weeks amid escalating tensions with the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. An Israeli security source identified the target as Ali al-Husni, the head of the missile force in the Imam Hossein division, an Iranian militia that operates alongside Hezbollah. It remains unclear whether he was killed. The Israeli military said additional details would be released later. According to Lebanese media, the strike hit the Shuwaifat area just south of Beirut. Lebanese security officials said 2 precision missiles targeted a building in the capital's southern suburbs. There was no immediate comment from Hezbollah or Iran. Israeli officials say the military had refrained from carrying out strikes in Beirut for the past 3 weeks following requests from Washington. However, Israeli surveillance drones have continued flying over Beirut on a near-daily basis. 2 Israeli security sources said Thursday's operation came after what they described as very intense dialogue with the Trump administration in recent days. The strike was the first on Beirut since May 6, when an Israeli attack killed Ahmad Galeb Bailut, a commander in Hezbollah's elite Radwan force. The latest attack deals another blow to a ceasefire announced by Washington on April 16th that was meant to halt months of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the Middle East war is beginning to weigh on Korea's real economy, with production, consumption, and investment all declining in April. The Ministry of Data and Statistics said this morning that industrial production across sectors fell 0.6% from the previous month, marking the first decline in 3 months. Petroleum refining output plunged about 19%, marking the sharpest decline in 37 years. Auto production fell 10%, while in contrast, semiconductor output rose more than 3%. Domestic demand and investment also showed weakness, with both the retail sales index and facility investment falling 3.6% from the previous month. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is expected to visit South Korea next week for the second time in around 7 months. According to industry sources on Thursday, Huang will arrive after wrapping up GTC Taipei 2026, NVIDIA's annual AI conference running June 1st through 4th in Taipei. During the visit, he's expected to meet executives from major Korean chip makers, including Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. Talks are likely to center on high-bandwidth memory, next-generation AI accelerators, and possible foundry cooperation. Huang is also reportedly set to meet LG Chairman Koo Kwang-mo to discuss expanding cooperation in physical AI. Additional meetings with Korean tech firms such as Naver are expected to focus on broader AI partnerships in cloud computing and emerging technologies. With humanoid robot monks making the headlines this week, Buddhism is increasingly adapting to modern culture and trends to connect with younger generations. Our culture correspondent Cho Young-eun has the story.
The Lotus Lantern Festival is a Korean celebration with more than 1,200 years of history. But this year, it was joined by some striking new figures. Humanoid robot monks, dressed in traditional robes, took part in the parade, drawing attention from visitors and the media alike. Among them was Gabi, the robot monk that became a focal point after receiving Buddhist precepts.
에너지를 아끼고 과충전이 않는 것입니다. 과충전 하지 않겠습니까? 예, 않겠습니다.
This transformation is becoming visible far beyond temples and festivals. Buddhist-themed brands have recently gained popularity among younger generations, turning spiritual messages into relatable cultural experiences and lifestyle content.
These days, Buddhism feels pretty hip among people my age. So I think it's great that more content like this is being created.
T-shirts featuring illustrated Buddha characters, key rings, and social media-friendly designs reinterpret Buddhist teachings with humor and warmth. Even celebrations surrounding Buddha's birthday are increasingly adopting elements of Korea's fandom culture.
There's something comforting and approachable about it. It gives people a chance to reflect on themselves and let go of some of the pressure they carry. So I think that's why it resonates positively with people.
By offering cultural experiences, religion is increasingly serving as a source of comfort, enjoyment, and even daily routine.
We think many young people struggle with uncertainty about life, and Buddhism offers realistic guidance and comfort, which is why we try to reflect those messages in our items.
Blending its open nature with technology and trends, Buddhism is becoming more accessible and engaging. 조영은, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Switzerland, a man stabbed 3 people at a train station in the Swiss city of Winterthur on Thursday in what police called, quote, an act of terror. The suspect is a 31-year-old Swiss-Turkish dual national who had been flagged in 2015 for distributing Islamic State propaganda. Investigators believe the man acted alone. Days before the attack, he was briefly held at a psychiatric facility after making alarming calls to police, but was released on Wednesday after being cleared as non-dangerous. 2 victims were discharged from hospital. The third underwent emergency surgery. In Kenya, a fire at a girls' boarding school killed at least 16 students and injured 79 others. The fire started just after midnight on Thursday. Doors on the upper floor where the blaze started were initially locked, and some students died after jumping from windows trying to escape. Several survivors told first responders a student had set fire to a mattress, though authorities have not confirmed the cause. The school has more than 800 students aged between 15 and 18. The U.S. Treasury has launched the Trump Accounts app nationwide. The app went live on Thursday, allowing parents to open investment accounts for children born between 2025 and 2028 with a $1,000 government seed deposit that will reportedly be deposited from July 4th. Parents, family members, and employers can contribute up to $5,000 annually, with funds automatically invested in a low-cost index fund with gains only taxed when withdrawn. The app was built with trading platform Robinhood and custodian bank BNY. An Austrian court sentenced a 21-year-old man to 15 years in prison on Thursday for plotting an attack on Taylor Swift's Vienna concerts in August 2024. The defendant planned to target crowds outside the stadium with knives and explosives. Authorities raided his home the day before the scheduled performances and found bomb-making materials. The planned attacks forced the cancellation of all 3 shows. A second defendant in the same case received a 12-year sentence.
We are looking at bright, sunny, and hot conditions through the weekend. Temperatures will continue 30 degrees Celsius as we head into Sunday. And again, strong sunshine will push UV levels very high nationwide. Along the south coast and in Jeju, UV levels could even reach the extreme category during the day. So sunscreen, hats, and plenty of water will definitely be essential today. And ozone levels are also expected to worsen this afternoon. As for daily highs, Seoul and Daejeon will be getting up to 28 degrees Celsius, Daegu at 29 degrees, but Busan and Jeju will be a bit more comfortable at 25 degrees. Then isolated showers are possible later today in inland western Gyeongsang-Namdo province. Warm and mostly sunny days will continue through next week, with afternoon highs hovering around 30 degrees in the capital.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Whoever wears the crown must bear its weight. What did the weight of the golden crown mean to the rulers of Shilla 1500 years ago? When it was first excavated, the golden crown was found flattened and folded into a cone shape, covering the face of the deceased. This dazzling artifact wasn't merely a funerary object placed to guard the tomb, or a true crown that once stood at the very peak of living power. Those who believe it was worn point to its tree-shaped ornaments, arguing that silver was mixed in, allowing the decorations to stand firm without bending. The exact purpose remains unknown, a symbol of royal authority and life, and as a final gesture of respect, being placed over the face to honor him with the highest form of tribute. The gold belt discovered alongside the crown likewise attests to the sacred authority of its wearer. Each shimmering gold plate is etched with symbols of authority. The golden crown and belt hallmarks of Shilla's golden age and flourishing renaissance still rate an enduring golden presence today. Only those who bore its weight could possess the Shilla's crown and belt, a dazzling testament to Shilla's enduring legacy.
Let's go, Simply K-pop! Hello everyone, I am Simply K-pop's MC Alan of Gravity.
네, 안녕하십니까 여러분. 저는 Simply K-pop MC 그래비티 원준입니다. Then this week's Simply K-pop, don't miss out!
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Friday, May 29th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Today's date is Cheska.
It's Friday, everyone.
It's Friday. The keys with us.
TGIF.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're finally at the end of the work week, but this Friday is also a day with a special meaning. Today is World No Tobacco Day, a global campaign that raises awareness about the dangers of smoking. Now, smoking rates may be falling in some countries, but debates around cigarettes and vaping and also personal freedom are still very much ongoing. So today we're going to start off by asking a bit of a personal question, whether our two panelists are smokers. And more broadly, Cheska, starting with you, what are your thoughts on smoking culture these days?
Yes, to celebrate non-smoking day, I try to be absolutely fair in considering both sides on most issues. But smoking is a quite interesting one because as a non-smoker with weak respiratory system, I always had a lot of trouble when I was around smokers nearby. I actually had to walk around or even cross to avoid them on the road to avoid street smokers. And I would sometimes even leave restaurants that allowed open smoking in some places overseas. I really don't have much against people who smoke, but I really think there should be stricter regulations on open smoking as well as cigarette trashing because they're actually quite destructive to sewage system, environment, and I think just public hygiene in general. Yeah.
And I know you're one of the most empathetic people I know. So for you to be so set on this,
thank you for saying that. Yeah.
It's a lot about smoking.
I try to be very open on both sides, but this one I'm a little bit
hard.
It's a bit hard, yeah.
What about you, Ki?
Well, she says she want to be fair, but then non-smokers can never be fair because they're most of the time victims of everything from health and everything. But honestly, I used to smoke before, and I hear what smokers have to say. And compared to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, public etiquette has gotten much better. Smokers didn't care about non-smokers before, but nowadays they acknowledge the fact that it could hurt them and people around them. And public awareness also far better than before. And a box of cigarettes has gotten much more expensive compared to, a few years ago. So I would say things are better, but also things are getting a lot tougher for smokers.
Right, so today we're bringing back our weekly debate segment, and this time we're talking about smoking. Now, I should probably amid this discussion could get a little heated, no pun intended, because as a non-smoker like Cheska, I may already be slightly biased. So today, let's have our smoker and non-smoker representatives battle it out. So, do conflicts between smokers and non-smokers happen often, Cheska?
Yes, and just like you, Sujin, I would try to be very open and try to keep it level to really represent the voice of some of the issues non-smokers face almost every day. And this sort of conflict and debate between smokers and non-smokers have always been a big issue online, and even I would say sometimes offline in real life. So starting in the 1990s, Korea began introducing designated non-smoking areas, and over time smoking bans expanded dramatically. And just like he said, the etiquette of smokers have improved. So today most indoor spaces are smoke-free, including bars, restaurants, and even PC cafes that used to allow smoking, I believe. But despite these changes, smoking in outdoor public spaces remain common, as well as many people actually smoking in apartment spaces where the smell travels through open windows as well as ventilators. Now, furthermore, I think the tension actually spans to environmental issues, discomfort, as well as we will discuss further, how smokers can actually get a second-hand benefits at workplaces.
Right, so this debate never really seems to disappear. It feels like every few months another smoking-related argument goes viral also online. And one of the biggest flashpoints is probably smoking in public spaces. So you kind of mentioned this before, but what do you think about people smoking like on the streets, in open air?
To just say no, please don't. Just please don't. But I'm quite confident that all non-smokers would probably be very hard against public smoking, because the smoke travels everywhere and it is extremely uncomfortable and even more harmful to some young children, pregnant women, just to name a few. And in public, non-smokers are vulnerable and exposed to indirect smoking without any sort of protection. I think furthermore, when people smoke in public, there's also another issue of people spitting and or throwing their cigarette trash. Of course, there are many responsible smokers, but there aren't enough laws, fees, or regulations for those who actually use the public street and spaces as their personal ashtray, which I don't think is doing any good for non-smokers, as well as reputation of other smokers who are doing extremely well. Yeah.
It kind of forces people who are just walking down the streets to be exposed to secondhand smoking.
Yes,
which is not fun.
And I think you've seen it before when you're walking right behind a smoker. The person would just toss the cigarette on the side and keep walking, or outside the car window when they're driving. And I think these are not doing any benefit to smokers. Yeah.
So, Ki, what are your thoughts on this?
It's already 2-1, so I don't know how we're going to win over this with you. But with the exception of a few inconsiderate people, like Cheska was mentioning, the rather rude people, most smokers tend to smoke in the secluded area. For example, like behind the buildings where few people pass by. One of the main reasons smokers end up smoking in public spaces is the severe lack of designated smoking booths. So in the 90s, we have introduced designated smoking area, but in Seoul alone, there are roughly about 1.3 million smokers, whereas the number of public smoking facilities across the city stands at 136. That means about 10,000 people have to share the single smoking area. And I'm not encouraging anyone to smoke, of course, yet there need to be more places where they can smoke so that they wouldn't hurt non-smokers.
Well, I'm really glad to have you on the show today, because I haven't thought about from their perspective how there's not enough, it's not that they want to smoke in open spaces. There's not enough spaces. So I do see both sides here. Non-smokers feel uncomfortable breathing it in, while smokers argue there simply aren't enough designated places to smoke. But these conflicts don't just stay outside on the streets anymore. So have smoking complaints in apartment buildings also seen a rise, Cheska?
Yes, because according to one platform report, apartment complexes in Korea receive around 400 smoking-related complaints, not year, every month. That's quite a lot if you think about it. Yeah. Many residents complain about cigarette smoke drifting in through the windows, or about encountering smoke in elevators, shared apartment spaces. And from the perspective of non-smoker, it's completely understandable why that feels unpleasant and almost intrusive, because this is your home, right? In fact, for the past 2 years, and I have a personal experience, I actually lived in a very expensive office style. It's like a condominium style here in Korea. Fully furnished, great amenities, got the gyms, pay the fee every month. And yet almost every morning when I got up to get ready, just to come to Arirang, I could literally smell the smoke coming in through my bathroom ventilator. And as a non-smoker, I would make complaints, and I wasn't the only one, because almost bi-weekly, they would make blast announcements saying, please don't smoke in the bathroom or public spaces for other people. But it kept continuing, and as a non-smoker, I had a very, very unpleasant experience. Yeah.
It was so funny. I actually heard a story from when I was getting my makeup done today. She was saying how recently she's been really stressed out because her neighbor smokes, and then the smoke has permeated into her house, so that it has affected her clothes.
Oh, because the smoke. Yes.
She puts her laundry on, and she now can sense like the smoke stench on her clothes too. So this could be very stressful.
Very, yeah.
That's why she's staring at me today. Okay. But again, that's true too. But smokers are not allowed to smoke on their own apartment's balcony. Again, it's their property, but they can't because they have to respect public etiquette. And when they go outside to smoke for the designated area, people complain that smell lingers in the elevator afterward, which is sort of helpless, right? And many people are very sensitive about smell. They even complain about certain food being cooked.
Yes.
So when I took my elevator in my own place, I sometimes can smell smokers were in the elevator, because right after they smoke and they go inside the elevator, then the smell sort of lingers.
In the lift, yeah.
Yeah, those smokers try to keep the rule. They smoke outside at the designated area. And so, like I said before, there are quite large population of smokers. It'd be nice if we can give them a little bit of room, a little bit easy on them, if they can keep the public etiquette.
It's true. People have become more aware of these rules. So apartment smoking disputes really seem to be impossible to avoid these days. Even if someone smokes at home, the smell spreads easily through hallways, windows, and ventilation systems. At the end of the day, it feels like this issue comes down to balancing personal freedom with consideration for others. And that's why we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking, what do you think about smoking in public spaces? And here's what the results showed. So around 86% said smoking in public is a public nuisance, citing concerns over secondhand smoke, unpleasant odors, and discomfort in crowded areas. Meanwhile, 14% said people should be more understanding towards smokers, arguing that the lack of designated smoking areas often leaves smokers with limited options. So the results really show how much public attitudes towards smoking have changed over the years, especially when it comes to shared spaces. But these debates don't stop once people head indoors or clock into work. So what are some workplace conflicts over smoking breaks, Key?
Right, so there was a heated debate online over the issue of smoke break during work hours. The argument was that the smokers often step out for cigarette breaks while working, and when you do include the time spent walking to and walking from the smoking areas, the total time adds up quite a bit. So as a result, some people complain that smokers effectively end up working fewer hours than non-smokers. Now, we have a separate smoking area. A couple of decades ago, you could have smoked anywhere, even inside a building, including this very building. Admit sometimes it was not fair that there was a cigarette meeting where they say they get some fresh air, then they go out, they talk about some important things, that they make a decision, and they come back. And there's even an episode about smoke talk on old famous TV show called Friends, where one of the main characters, Rachel, she tries to get some, favor from her boss and win her heart. So she joins a smoke talk, but she finally couldn't do it because she was not a smoker. That sort of incident may give you unfair image, and that was why this was a heated debate.
Things have changed, but that societal pressure is also there. So I've actually seen this debate explode online quite a few times. And for non-smokers, it can feel like smokers are getting extra break time also throughout the day as well. And that brings us to the bigger question of fairness in the workplace. So what do you think about smoke breaks personally, Jessica?
When I watched that Friends episode with Rachel, I could not agree more with what she was going through, because I've actually experienced it quite a few times at workplaces. So according to data from the Korean Disease Control and Prevention Agency, adult smokers in Korea smoke an average of about 13 cigarettes a day. So if roughly 6 of those are smoked during work hours, then once you include, like he said, walking to designated areas and returning, the total time spent on walking breaks can add up to nearly an hour a day. And from the perspective of non-smokers, that can feel very, very unfair. Also, smokers end up informally discussing work or making important decisions together during smoke breaks. So as a result, some non-smokers, including myself, could feel very excluded from those conversations or networking moments, even though they're not choosing to take the same breaks. And sometimes I really genuinely wanted to take a break and get a fresh air, but I didn't have the legitimacy of taking a smoke break. While I saw other workers get up and leave together every, let's say, an hour or 2 hours, and then come back talking. And I have no idea what had happened, and they feel more freshened up because they got their smoke break. So sometimes it felt very unfair, yes.
Also, I feel like it's kind of sad that you might feel pressure to start smoking to participate in those meetings.
Yes,
right?
and I think in the past, people felt more of that pressure because it was more common to smoke. So I think especially men, they wanted to join in the conversation. So I know they say we learned smoking to get work done.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is your experience with it? What are your thoughts on this?
A lot of things I say makes me very small, but smoking can also be considered a form of break time, like coffee break. Some people go to restaurant frequently. Some people end up chatting on their message app or talking on the phone for quite a few times. So frankly speaking, no one really stays for full 8 hours and stay fully focused. So sometimes some argue that smokers are being judged too harshly. And they also point out that legally, even brief moments away from one's desk during working hours by the Labor Ministry, such as stepping out for a cigarette or for a cup of coffee, are still considered parts of working hours unless excessively abused.
What's funny, Zach, is that technically they can argue that they're still being productive because these meetings are being held as they're smoking. So this really feels like one of those debates where neither side will ever fully agree. So one side sees smoking breaks as a special treatment, while the other sees them as just another way people take short breaks during work. So we also wanted to hear about this directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking, should smoke breaks during work hours count as working time? So here's what the results showed. About 69% said they should not, arguing that smokers effectively receive extra break time compared to non-smokers. Meanwhile, 31% said smoke breaks should still be considered part of working hours, viewing them as short personal breaks, no different from getting coffee or briefly stepping away from a desk. So honestly, I personally thought the results would lean more towards it not counting as work hours, but it still seems like a decent amount of people feel smoking breaks cross the line from a quick breather into an actual workplace fairness issue. So to wrap up our discussion today, Cheska, what are your final thoughts on smoking culture?
Please don't smoke now. But obviously that is not the end. That is not the solution. But as a firm believer in personal freedom and choice, yes, as smoking is also part of a personal choice, one must be able to exercise it. However, personal freedom always comes with the responsibility to not harm others as well. And clearly, smoking does have, as we discussed today, in multiple layers of social, environmental, and even economical impact when it comes to smoking in not such a positive light. Therefore, ban on smoking is not the solution, but a more defined, clear regulations and penalties, as well as more contained spaces for smokers. And when I actually saw the survey, it actually brought me this idea of actually designating a personal time for both the smokers and non-smokers, so they can use that time to take a sick break or to grab coffee or just to step outside. So there is sort of, you know, this positive image for both people who are taking smoke breaks as well as those who are stepping out because they need a breath of fresh air.
Everyone deserves a break at work, so that is true. What are your thoughts on this, Kim?
I knew this debate is going to be very one-sided, but
it was very fair, I think, for non-smokers.
I used to be a smoker just because the reason I started smoking was because it was a social thing. I wanted to have more context with my superior when I started working, and all my superiors were smokers. So to join them, I had to learn smoking, which I quit now, by the way. And I know how smokers feel. You know, they basically are not respected naturally, of course, and it's a choice they've made. But if they have more spaces where they can smoke without harming others' health, they would follow public's common sense more strictly. And smoking in public spaces are already banned. You know, you end up paying fine if you do smoke in, for example, bus stations or park, right? But honestly, for those of you who smoke, listen to Uncle Key. From the bottom of my heart, I would recommend you quit smoking for yourself and also the people around your family, friends, and everybody. But if you must smoke, please let's avoid harming public health.
What was the best thing about quitting smoking for you?
That's a great question.
I feel healthier for some reason, and my voice has gotten better. I can breathe longer, and because my job involves obviously making my voice condition always a certain level.
And you have a great voice too.
Thank you. And if you smoke, then sometimes you can see the cracking voices sometimes, and so overall you feel healthier, and you can proudly say, I don't smoke. So that's another good thing.
Oh, Sujin, if I may, Ki, what was the response from people around you when you actually quit smoking? What were some of the things that they noticed?
Well, everyone was favorable of me, and then they were questioning, oh, you're not going to smoke anymore? So I was like, yeah. And then, they liked the idea that I am joining that movement of quit smoking. And if you actually take a look at I don't have an official record, but I'm pretty sure the amount of people who are smoking, the smoking population has gotten way smaller than before, especially after COVID too. So I think it's a right movement that we're going into.
You say you started smoking, part of it was work-related as well.
Right.
Do you feel like people around you have also stopped?
A lot of people start with the curiosity. Number two, maybe social gathering, and then they get addicted to it. A lot of substances that in a cigarette have, you get a habit of it, and that's the worst part.
The routine and
the routine, and then it affects your health, of course, right? So it's really hard to get out of it. So we have a funny saying that it's not quit smoking. You're trying to hold on to it.
Right, you're trying to endure.
Right, endure the time that you're not smoking until a certain period of time. So, guys, again, smoking is bad for your health.
Listen to Uncle Ki.
Please listen. Try not to smoke, especially for you and people around you.
Right, well said. So, whether you're a smoker or a non-smoker, one thing is quite clear: this debate is probably not disappearing anytime soon. And as smoking culture continues to change, the challenge will be finding a balance between personal freedom and also consideration for others. And maybe today is a perfect excuse to finally quit or at least avoid smoking near your coworkers. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. And News Gen will be back on Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussion. A big thanks to Cheska.
Thank you.
And also Ki.
Thank you. Happy No Tobacco Day.
Yay!
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we managed to clear the air better than most smoking zones. We are
News Generation.
It may have been the tomb of a young prince. Kmyongchong Tomb, one of Shila's ancient burial mounds. The gold crown and belt discovered here were notably smaller than those found in other tombs. The Shila royal family is believed to have carefully prepared the tomb for a young life that ended too soon, placing a variety of grave goods within. Among the many artifacts, one pair of objects in particular draws the eye. Earthenware figures that seem as if they might gallop off at any moment. Look closely, and you'll notice the two figures are slightly different. Did you spot the difference? One exudes authority, wearing an ornate headdress and full armor. The horse, too, is richly adorned with elaborate harnesses. In contrast, the other figure appears plainly dressed, with hair tied in a top knot and a cloth wrapped around the head. Based on their attire and size, the more elaborate figure is presumed to be the tomb's occupant, while the simpler one appears to be a servant. So what exactly are these pottery figures which vividly reflect the everyday life of Shila people? They are, in fact, hollow vessels, pitchers. Water could be poured in through a funnel at the horse's rear and dispensed through a spout at its chest. Then why would the Shilla people place such intricate vessels in a tomb of a young prince? Perhaps it was a heartfelt wish that the young prince whose life was cut short would never go thirsty on his long journey to the heavens.
가벼운 말이 가득한 곳 난 아무렇지